Guys, I just wanted to tell you about my crazy little imaginary world I just decided to make up. So it's like story idea, you know, for like a series or something. So if you find inspiration in this, if you want to create your own little universe, um, but basically, I want to make this a uh soft world universe, not necessarily a hard world universe. Like it could work, but it would have to be like in a specific way, that kind of thing, where you have to do really good for like the world building stuff. But yeah, it's most likely going to just be a soft world. But basically, I'm going to call it the ZoOloG, and it's going to be spelled ZoOLog. ZoOloG. Okay? And ZoOloG will be one word. Okay? Like that's just that's just what it's gonna be. And the will be the. And then yeah, it would just be that. Anyway, this the ZoOloG or whatever starts off as a guy, like those stories where it's like they explain a bit about how their universe works before you get to watch the actual show. Like it could be a great show, don't get me wrong, but it's like, what if instead of like telling you about the story, that story is the show? Like instead of telling you the story of long before time or when these people in this time happened. No, these people in this time is the show. Like that story is the show, and it's like the first of how these people started or whatever. And basically, it starts off with like this one guy who has all this power, and then he creates infinite lands, and he has like on a the tiniest island he can get. That's about the size of like, I don't know, modern day Iceland, or about the size of one Switzerland or something. And in this world, there isn't really any development or anything like that. It's just a bunch of people who exist on an island. And there's like many plants and many animals and stuff, but there's not a lot. It's just like kinda exists. Anyway, there's this giant rock that's on the top of this island. And on the top of this island, like there's this one guy, and that one guy who creates everything, and it's just like this green glowing rock kind of, and not like super bright green or anything like that, just like there's lines like spider web looking lines on it all over it in many different spots, kind of like looking at dry mud kind of thing. Anyway, this rock or whatever has this shiny glowing thing, and so our main guy comes up to it, walks up to it, and then just kind of like consumes it, and then it goes back into him, and then it starts mixing with red and blue all over, and then it just kind of splits into two, and there's two parts of the island where it's like there's small little populations on each side, and they're just kind of like forming to like, take up space of the island to take up the whole island. Well, anyway, because of it, the red side goes to one part and the blue side goes to the other part. And so basically it gives like these tribes like certain advantages. Like the red tribe gets really good at the ability to like dig and make good agriculture, whereas the blue one, the blue society gets really good at hunting fish and I don't know, say really good at just like um being able to climb, things like that. And then eventually a natural disaster starts coming at their island, and they're like in their world they're like the farthest island from like any island ever in that entire universe's history. Anyway, this island or whatever gets like a natural disaster coming towards them, and the blue tribe that can normally handle stuff like this doesn't have the capabilities, and so it starts going through their tribe, if you know what I mean. And so the red tribe stops it. But then the thing is it cuts off the main fish supply and the main water supply that they like to have or whatever, and so it causes slight tensions. Like it's not like a real big thing, but it's like it starts to cause tensions, and so it makes them mad at each other. And then eventually over time, like your main guy, he, because of the natural disaster or whatever, gets moved out from the other island, and then they start like having their like little war, and eventually other subcultures and things like that start to form, and then your other guy, like that's what we're seeing. We're seeing like the guy who like did all of this, like is kind of stuck on another island, kind of, and it's like a small island, like even smaller. Like it would be like the size of your average house, small, like that kind of thing. And so, because of it, eventually, after a couple of episodes, or maybe just like one episode, this guy comes back, and there's like hierarchies being formed, and there's like enslavement going on, and then eventually, these power peoples start having a special kind of hierarchy, and the lower class doesn't really like it too much, but they just deal with it. And there are these like funny looking guys that are just like absolute machine looking kind of guys, and they're like every time one of them starts buffering out a little, like they're kind of losing their power, because a lot of like the whole point is that these powers are kind of temporary, and so that's how it gets them into certain situations. That's how I said they went through it earlier. The blue tribe or whatever you want to call them, and because of it, the workers have to work as like normal humans. And then these tribal guys, these big buff tribal looking guys, they get injected or whatever, and then he looks up and there's like your main guy looks up and there's this big castle or whatever. He tries to get in, but these big buff guys that are like guard / army people, and they don't try to let him in and things like that, and they don't really want him in. And then eventually he finds his own way in, and then to the well it's the two tribes. It's the freaking two tribes. They're not sharing these berries or whatever that they're mostly taking from the groups. They're just slightly giving it to their peoples and taking it and putting it into basically magic juice for their soldier guys. And then on the very top, it's like a castle within a castle. But on the very top, there are these two little hills, and it's like the families and the two rulers of the tribes, because they started to form, and it was like the strongest colonies at that particular time. And then because of it, like when I mean strongest, I mean like most well trusted and most well powerful. And because of it or whatever, they have like the special hierarchy and things. And for the longest time, these tribes, like, they're known to absolute, like, hate each other. They just hate each other because they have slightly different powers or whatever. But these two families behind closed doors, they're allied with each other. They're basically hoarding all the berries or whatever, the special power berries or whatever. And this guy, he doesn't like it. He shows it to the lower subcultures. And they're like, I don't know, because they still don't exactly believe it. But then when it's confirmed true, a lot of them start leaving the island, but then it starts making them feel threatened. And so they start, they were already heavily in conflict, but they start trying to, like, encourage, like, fighting against these subcultures or this or that. Because, the berries, they had taken over the berries, and eventually they start realizing, this is bullshit, and because of it, well, they start the subcultures kind of start fighting over each other, and then because they realize this is bullshit, they start attacking over the main tribes. And then eventually, because of it, a lot of these groups start leaving, and these groups end up developing slightly different languages, music, cultures, societies, eventually maybe even holidays, fighting styles, foods, ways of living, ways of interacting, different dealing with different environments. Some are water peoples, some are air peoples, and it's basically just like a battles and kings and queens and other stuff like this tribe better kind of thing. And like, oh, you have this thing, I have this thing, that kind of thing. And throughout the show, like, it starts off really easy. And don't forget our main guy. I don't know why I keep trying to add out the main guy. Well, anyway, throughout the series, this main guy starts getting more character development and whatever. And because of it, he's like, this island kind of sucks. Might as well go explore. And this is like at the end of the first season. And throughout the show, it's basically just him going to like different islands and things like that, where all these peoples fled to, and then eventually fled to other islands as well, where they have like all these different powers, wars happen, conflicts create other conflicts, and then a bajillion different other things. But basically, over time, it gets more and more complicated. But it's like certain amount of groups complicated. It doesn't get truly complicated. Like it does to the point where it starts to become like its own universe, but not enough where there's like a lot of explanation. Just enough where it, like, by the end of the series, by the end of that specific show, it constantly makes you want to like know a whole lot about that universe. But then it's like, the more you know about the universe, it's like the more questions you have about it. like the more deep you want to get into it kind of stuff. And then by the end of it, it's like most of the current big conflicts have ended, and eventually the two big tribes come to peace, and because of it or whatever, it creates like it kind of ends it, and like the main guy becomes like the big hero, but eventually this guy or whatever, like he becomes the great guy or whatever and things like that, and then he decides to give it to somebody else, and that becomes like many generations or whatever later down the line. But he becomes the first I don't know, ZoOloG. Just why not? Because he's the first OG ZoOloG, and then the OG ZoOloG second or whatever basically expands the universe of this show. Whereas like in the beginning in this show, it doesn't really expand it at all. Like it does expand, it does get bigger, but it's like it's more of just like it's expanding from that specific character's point of view kind of thing. And then whatever the next show is, it's like many generations down the line, and it's like I don't know, ZoOloG 25 kind of thing. And because of it, it's like most peaceful. Like there was a bunch of stuff that could potentially happen, this and this and this, and then there's like some mysterious stuff. And then at the end of it, it's just like super duper peaceful and super duper things, and it's like it's basically ending in a way where it's like you're never gonna get that specific show again. Where it's like that universe could expand and create a whole bunch of different things, but that specific show will never have like episodes again. But hey, at least it was good while it ran. And then that show will end where it like it wants you to like where it makes you want more. And then eventually it creates a bunch of little other shows, and then those shows create shows where it just like some of those are like lore deep, and then the others are just like expansion shows or like reboots or whatever, things like that. And it just basically creates an entire universe after that, like it all because of one show. And then it's like it's like each show is basically becomes like its own universe over time, and it gets really complicated, like truly complicated, and it just expands and expands and expands in a way where it's like, instead of other series where if they last for too long, especially if it has a specific cast, it's not going to work out. It's going to become more of like a Lego Ninjago thing, where every time you get something explained, you get like a bunch of more questions you want to ask, because all it really does is it just expands the universe more, expands that group more. So where it's like constantly endless, where you can end that part of that story of that tales, but it never ends the actual series itself. It just ends that specific show or specific story or things like that. But it just doesn't end the series. It just makes it go further and further and further until either it becomes something completely unrecognizable from itself, or it's just been around for so long that it's basically just its own multiverse. Like that's how much it could get, that kind of thing. Or multiverse is. That would be interesting. But yeah, that's my original idea series, the ZoOloG. And yeah, and eventually the powers and crazy things and dynamics and systems and governments and whatever get formed, and like the ZoOloG is like some ancient myth at some point, but then it's like, no, he needs to become the 25th ZoOloG, the greatest, biggest guy, and then that becomes like, I don't know, the continuation series, and then it sets off a bunch of other shows as well. So there will be like a lot of crossover episodes. There's going to be like a lot of episodes that start off other shows from other shows. Like some characters will be put into their own show or something, or movie series, or book franchise. Just like a lot of stuff that you would have a lot of time to like explain the lore for, you know? And so you could get really deep with it, like start off extremely light for the most part, but then slowly over time get deeper and deeper and get more developed and developed until it just becomes one of the greatest franchises to ever exist. And then it ends, like it all ends with just the biggest expansion it possibly can. And then when that happens, just like, you know, we gotta constantly do it in a way where it expands other universes and makes like people want to make their own shows and own movies and own books and video games and things like that. But basically it's just like its own thing, and then just when it's over, and then that franchise is gone, or at least just done with. And then when it's done with, it can just turn into something so different at that point. You might as well go from there, or just make your own universe from that, inspired from it, and then just keep the cycle going, whatever it may be. But if you ask me, I would say I would put it in like an extreme, like, caveman themed universe, like space caveman themed universe, that kind of thing, with like a bunch of like myth lore stuff, you know, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's my whole idea story stuff called the ZoOloG. Anyway, that's pretty much it on this topic, and I didn't want to like post it to TikTok or whatever, because at the time of recording this video, if you don't know what TikTok is, it was a platform that was made by China, and it got really popular or whatever, and it was like the most popular website, and it like limits you on how long you can make videos and stuff for like 10 minutes or whatever. So I basically just decided, you know what? I'm going to post it onto YouTube, since I can post longer videos on here and get like really into deep things like I have here. Well, anyway, yeah, it would just be like a great expansion universe, that kind of thing. But once it ends, and then people just make their inspirations and cool stories and things like that from that universe. Anyway, I gotta end this video so it can get released. But yeah, that's my idea story. The ZoOloG. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna end this video. So, have a nice day.